1934 Patterson all-wave console tube radio part 2. In part 1, the objective was just to get the radio working, find out what it needed, if it was even worthy of being restored, meaning no major faults, power transformer, IF transformer, some unobtainable part was bad. Wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. Originally it was just to get it to work, but since it does seem to be a rare radio and it's kind of neat, and I talked to a friend of mine, he's willing to display it in his shop. Now the objective is just to eliminate some of the higher risk parts as economically as possible. I'm not going to spend a lot of time or money on this, just going to try and remove things like this original electrolytic, which have a high probability that it will short. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that with a standoff. I'm just going to disconnect it. Here's what we're going to do. I went on DigiKey and I ordered 2 values of disc capacitors. Now the purists are going to go completely ape over the fact that I'm using disc capacitors, number 1, and number 2, that I've only purchased 2 values for this radio. This radio only has about 3 values in it, which is 0.1, 0.25, and 0.002. Well, all of these up here are just bypass capacitors. All they do is they filter the RF from the IF cans off of the distribution resistor that's down there. So I'm going to replace all of these right here with 0.22 microfarad 630 volt 10% disc capacitors. Down here in the audio section, most of these are all 0.02. So I purchased 0.02 microfarad disc capacitors. A lot of guys don't like to use disc capacitors in the audio line. You know what? Whatever. We're not going with some hi-fi something here. When it comes to these domino postage stamp things, a lot of times these are paper, but the schematic actually says these are mica, and they don't seem to be presenting a problem, so I'm going to leave them alone for now. So let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test these electrolytics. I've had really good luck with these dry electrolytics. This right here, the original electrolytic, was probably one of those big gel-filled ones. These short. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get this thing out of circuit. Now, whoever worked on this before, you can see where the 2 wires are tied together there on the positive of this electrolytic. They tied those 2 terminals together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically put a terminal strip in here, standoff, just to use this as a tie point and isolate so that it's not in the circuit. Alright, let's really get the purest aggro. I'm going to run audio through these capacitors to check them. Basically listen to what they sound like, and it's basically the same as an ESR tester. It's just cheaper and I'm used to it, so here we go. Totally open, nothing there. Totally open, nothing there at all. Capacitors, the original capacitors, totally gone. That one sounds good. That one sounds good. That one there sounds like it's gone. And it's hard to tell. That's a cathode bypass resistor right there in parallel with it. So we'd have to take it out of circuit to verify, but that one sounds like it's open. That's just a cathode bypass for the audio driver tube. So with that one being open, the audio would just have a little bit less bass and wouldn't be quite as loud, but that's not a concern on this. The likelihood of that shorting is almost zero because there's only a few volts across it and it's paralleled with a resistor. So I'm not even going to worry about that. Alright, here it is all isolated off, and I just want to make sure this is a good clear picture so nobody soils their pins. I've used the terminal strip as a standoff, but I'm just still using the capacitor as a tie point, but there's nothing electrically tied to the old capacitor. It's isolated. That way if the capacitor shorts, it won't blow the rectifier tube up. Interesting, looking down through here, it doesn't even look like there's a fuse in there. Maybe I better take that apart and inspect it. Yes, there is a fuse. I guess you can move it from one place to another, or originally you could for different voltages, but since the transformer has been changed, looks like about a 30 amp automotive fuse. It's a 20 amp automotive fuse. So what I'm going to do is when I'm all finished with this, after I've replaced all the wax capacitors and aligned it and I got it working pretty good, I'm going to measure the current draw and we'll put the appropriate fuse in it, because I'm sure the surge on that transformer is much greater than the original transformer. So we'll have to probably get a slow blow or something in there, but we do want to fuse this appropriately so that if something shorts, the fuse gets taken out. That transformer is so big that if anything shorted, like one of the capacitors, it would just blow the rectifier tube apart and probably burn that big resistor up. That is such a huge power transformer for this set. I'm sure the current it could deliver will far exceed the threshold of any part in here would just melt. Capacitors came. These are 0.022 at 1 kilovolt. Look at the size of these. These are the bigger size, and these are good Japanese made. They're about 75 cents a piece. These are 0.22 at 630 volts. Look at the size of these. Made in Japan. So this is about $18 shipped. It's okay. Like I said, I'm going to put this radio on display, and my friend's, he wants to put it in his waiting room for a while, let his customers trip out on it. It will be on LA Oldies, the old music station. There's 10 of the new one versus 1 of the old one. So when we install these, we're going to change it up a little bit. An example of that would be, right now this big capacitor is going from this pin of the tube to ground. You can see it's soldered on right there to ground. When we put the new one in, we're going to solder it from here to ground right there. Okay? So, and the same thing with this one here. This one is soldered from this tube pin here to ground. With the new one, we'll solder it from this pin to ground to get the lead length as short as possible. We want to keep the leads as close as possible because they are just RF bypass. They are just cleaning up the RF off the stages of this power resistor that distribute voltage to the different IF stages. And pretty much the same thing down here. I might end up replacing these line capacitors. I might not use these. I might use the safety caps since I got them. There's only 2 of those, one here and one there. Let's go over the performance of the radio real quick. It's fired up and running, and it does not have an antenna on it right now, so I'm just going to kind of do a band sweep and we'll see how it performs. My main complaint right now with how it performs is the howling as I tune from station to station.
In depth, I'm Mike Simpson along with Charles Feldman.
When Elon Musk made that announcement on Tuesday via Twitter that he was going to take Tesla from Wall Street.
That's what I mean, that squealing, whistling.
Hey, if you shower or even brush your teeth or try to make your hair look presentable, well, I've got good news for you. Our Shave Club will deliver everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best. And right now, for just $5, you can get their daily essential starter kit. That's body cleansing.
Of course, that bup. Oh, that bup is the camera, I believe. So it gets the oldies station without an antenna connected. That's pretty impressive. That's real impressive. It's probably picking it up through one of these coils on the bottom. Yeah, it is. So this coil is obviously, when it's in the cabinet, there's a metal shield over the bottom. So it's picking up, using this as an antenna right now. All right, I'm probably gonna come back to this a little later. It's over 100 degrees out here, and it's pretty brutal. We're gonna check the operation after each capacitor replacement. That way I know if I screwed something up. So I just turned it on. You can see how originally the old capacitor was grounded over here. Is that even showing up in this damn thing? Original old capacitor was grounded here. New capacitor is grounded here. Well, that didn't improve the squealing at all. Okay, I got these three out of circuit. I don't like that. So they are obviously doing something.
That's why you don't have
Wow. So I changed those three capacitors that were, there was one here and then a bunch of big ones here, which are these right here. The squealing is gone.
The taxpayers, and most of them are middle class, the vast majority. 하고 하나님만 그런데요.
That's it, the squealing is gone. So it was one of those three capacitors, one of these three was causing that squealing in between stations. Now I shouldn't rush to judgment, it could come back, but that's all I did between this clip and the last clip. So this I'm interested in checking. This is a 0.5. And this is obviously just a cathode bypass cap because you can see where it's connected right there. There's also a resistor going to ground. It's, I don't know if you could see it right there. Right there. So this is just cathode bypass. So I'm just checking the voltage drop that would be across this capacitor, and it's only 5 volts. So I don't think I'm going to change that capacitor because the likelihood of that ever shorting, I'm going to check it with the cap checker, but with 5 volts across it, well, let's see. If I ground it here, does it make any difference? So it makes no difference when that's connected DC voltage wise, so it's not shorted. I just changed that one and that one with no noticeable effect to the operation. I did change that big fat paper one because it was leaky. Next I'm going to change these 3. These are just all bypass capacitors, so I'll probably tie them all to this ground point down here instead of having them go to all these different ground points. The leads will be real short. So I replaced these 3 capacitors right here. I got the right values in there, same thing that came out, and this is all I get now when I turn the volume up. So why is that? Well, I think I see what happened here. I started putting the old capacitors back in and it didn't improve it. Then I started checking my plate voltages and there's no plate voltage on this tube. So I traced it back and it looks like I got a crusty solder joint here. It's real hard to see under this dog bone, but it's like impossible. Yeah, I got a crusty solder there. It's real hard to solder under these dog bones. They're all crumbly. I'm afraid I'm going to break them if I bend them too far.
All year long, that was spent elsewhere.
Finally, I got that thing corrected. The solder did not want to stick to that wire coming over here, so I had to clean it all off and scrub it and use flux. But man, if I had done a bulk recap and then turned it on, I would have really been chasing my tail. I knew the issue that I created was most likely in this area because it was the last place I worked. That's why I'm going through it step by step and testing it after each certain capacitor or group of them. Okay, it's fully recapped. We've replaced the across the line capacitors with the appropriate capacitors. And everything has been recapped except the electrolytics, which tested fine. And like I said, I like these dry electrolytics. I can't say I've ever seen one go bad. Does have some hum, but that's like audio noise being picked up from here. That's not electrolytic hum. It's drawing 770 milliamps. We could do surge. Let's see, we could do surge current on this thing. We'll do min-max and let it cool off for a few minutes, and I bet it's going to need about a 2 amp slow blow fuse. Alright, it's cooled off for a few minutes, so let's hit it. Meters on min-max. Come on. Wow, what a hell of a 10 amps, 10.4 amps was our surge. Jeez, no wonder they have a 20 amp fuse in there. All right, let's try this again. It hasn't cooled off that far this time, but 7.8 amps. So, you know, that massive transformer, if the crossing is opposed, and I can try and explain this. If when I turned the radio off, the core of the transformer was polarized positive, let's just say, and then I turn the radio on and the sine wave is negative, it's got to rip the magnetic field in that core back from positive to negative, so it creates a huge surge. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. I understand it, but I don't know how to communicate it. Anyway, that's where you get these massive surges on transformers when the core is polarized. That's what the whole zero crossing computer thing is with like high current lighting and stuff. You always want to turn it on at the line zero crossing sine wave, where the whatever. So if I put a capacitor, you can hear this. If I put, basically I have, from this resistor to ground, I have -8 volts. If I put a capacitor from here to the chassis, it completely gets rid of that hum. So I'm going to do it. It's not enough filtering. The capacitors are grounded through this resistor, and this stuff over here is to float the ground up so that you get a negative voltage to bias the tubes. So I'm going to try and put a capacitor from there to ground with the positive on ground, the positive on the chassis and the negative on the resistor, because it is a negative voltage. Boy, adding that capacitor in made it an 8 out of 10. Listen, totally quiet. Wow. All right, we're going to do a quick IF alignment on this. I'm going to give it a half hour or so to warm up and stabilize. I believe the IF frequency in this is 262, which is like the old car radios. There were 3 or 4 different schematics that this radio could have been. I never found the exact schematic, and the IF frequency was different on each one. But the schematic where the capacitor values matched the closest was 262, and it does appear that it's 262, because if and I just have the signal generator clipped on there to the first IF tube, and I'm not even metal to metal. I'm just clipped on to the it's clipped onto the insulation that HP signal generator puts out so much power, it'll just blast right through anything without a direct connection. So I'll let this warm up, then we'll just go through and align these 6 capacitors. It's probably pretty close. Oh well. I don't have a plastic tip screwdriver that's stiff enough to turn these without twisting the tip off the screwdriver, so I just got to be more careful. That one was a little bit off. That one was a tiny bit off. Okay, not bad. Alignment was not far off, and I still don't have an antenna on it, and the receiver is really hot. So, you know, the ultimate alignment would be to somehow do it, because it's got, see, when it's in the cabinet, it's got this metal plate covering the bottom. But of course, there's no way to align it with that metal plate on it, but ideally, that's what you would want to do, is align it with, you know, everything in place.
Love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so.
Okay, let's get it back in the cabinet.
Why won't you tell me what you did? What was that promise that you made? Now I'm gonna love you till the heavens stop the rain. I'm gonna love you till the stars fall from the...
It's almost a crime to play the Doors on AM when it's not stereo. The stereo separation is so wide on the Doors of that era. It's incredible. You can almost align your stereo multiplex decoder with the Doors.
What was that promise that you made? Look at the head between us. And you'll become a victim. That's exactly why the only plan I've ever recommended is through... I gotta get right there for himself. Pictures and videos, great stories, amazing transformations, and then grab the phone and call 855-2 to receive a free exam, CT scan, and X-rays, $1,200 value for free. Financing options, they're available too, like no money down on approved credit. Cunnington.
The AVC just can't taper back far enough for the between K and X. I'd have to turn the RF gain on the back down a little bit. And this is going to be the shop. This is going to be in as a metal building, and he pretty much is only going to play the oldie station. So I'm going to leave the RF gain wide open.
We've got a live report now from KNX 1070's Cooper Road.
I'm just yards away from the McVicker Park Fire Station, but I can't see it because the smoke is so thick. I can hardly see the flames either, which have been making a run toward the station and homes nearby for the last hour or so. But brush going up in flames. One man who lives nearby says he's getting out of here. The new fire activity is still...
You can see the smoke down here. It's so damn thick. It's like high altitude. It's got the sun wiped out.
Long and hard before going up against the California Coastal Commission that just came down hard on a couple of...
And all of that obtained.
Shortwave works. This is shortwave.
Take care. We'll see you again next week.
I missed the beginning of this. This is a request to someone in Michigan on shortwave. I have no idea what frequency I'm on. Fine tuning.
Now, SwitzerlandandSound.com in Bern, Switzerland. And you're listening to WRMI, Radio Miami International, Okeechobee, Florida, USA, and www.wrmi.net. Send us your comments and reception reports to info@wrmi.net.
And lament, ye priests. Oh, ye ministers of the altar, come lie all night in sackcloth, ye ministers of my God. For the meat offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. Sanctify ye your fast. Call the solemn assembly. Gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God, and cry unto the Lord. Alas for the day! For the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. Alas for the day! For the day of the Lord is at hand. Alas for the day! For the day of the Lord is at hand. Oh, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint.
Had been living in the U.S. as permanent residents. Victor was a car dealer, Amali worked at a textile factory. This is USA Radio News. The following update is for drivers who pay too much for car insurance due to DUIs, DWIs, tickets, or anything else. Our company specializes in low-cost SR22 auto insurance. We know that mistakes happen and offer free quotes for very affordable auto insurance meant specifically for you, the overpaying high-risk driver. The quote is
Four major segments: social, political,
been running pretty much for 2 days straight. It's got about 45-50 hours on it. We're gonna check out Disco Saturday Night a week later, and that's it. It's done, recapped, ready to ship it out of here.
It's Southern California's biggest Saturday night dance party, the original Disco Saturday Night on LA Oldies, K-Surf, AM 1260 and AM HD Stereo, KSUR Beverly Hills. Also on HD Stereo at KKGO HD2 Los Angeles. And streaming worldwide at LAOldies.com. Disco Saturday Night. Keep it here as we keep the great disco hits rolling your way on LAOldies.com.
boy, here's a song I don't recognize. Damn, Google doesn't even get it. Really? Well, if Google doesn't get it on the phone, then Google shouldn't get it on the YouTube database. Copyright thing, right? Doesn't get it. I'll just leave it in the video. We'll see if it gets it. Yeah, it's windy out here. It's actually rock solid. The stability's good. It's working really well. There's no drift.
This is Chris's TV 1979.
Is anyone still alive? Anyone still out there? Hello? Where'd everyone go? I appreciate all the comments. I read each and every one. I don't really have time to respond to all of them. I do welcome constructive criticism, but please understand the objective of these videos, society and the internet has deemed responsible and mandatory before turning something like this on. My methods are a little bit different. On this channel is a little bit different than kind of your boilerplate, you know, recap it and do all the standard stuff that, but the outcome seems to be about the same. The radios work. Okay, if you missed part one, the cabinet's filled with termites. It's in bad shape. I glued it back together with polyurethane glue and put a quick shoe shine on it with some varathane stain. There's a lot of modifications to this chassis. The power transformer was replaced at one time. A lot of this stuff down here, this big power resistor was added, and all of these other modifications. There's modifications in this radio and replacement parts everywhere. So we're not working with a prime specimen here that we want to keep 100% authentic and hollow out the old capacitors and restuff them. We're working with something that's rusty and rotten and insect infested, and this is just for entertainment. It's entertainment with pleasing results. Another point I would make on the comments is these videos are often very long, and the statistics show that the average view time is about 10 minutes. As the videos progress, I often discover things and learn things and figure things out, and I don't go back and correct myself or delete what happened in the first part of the video, because that discovery is part of working on something like this. So if a viewer just watches the first few minutes of a video and then comments, well, you should have done blah, 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 well, that person didn't watch enough of the video to see that I actually discovered that and learned that and made that correction. So keep that in mind when commenting. Before you rush to judgment on something you see on any video, you should view the whole video. Don't rush to judgment on something because they have a certain style or the progression of what they're doing. So I'm assuming this is supposed to be 240K red, yellow, yellow, and then 20%. Well, out of circuit, it's measuring 332K, so, you know, it's 100K over, so whatever, I don't care. It's not going to affect the function of the radio any. Besides, this resistor isn't even on the schematic. This is part of the modification, so who even knows if they got it right. So how do I read this? I've never really had to change these, and I see this one's got arrows on it. So is that 501? Is that 500 picofarads? 5 green, black, brown. So 50 and then 1, is that 10? So 500 picofarads? Really? All right, this one says mica mold, Brooklyn, New York, and it's orange, green, brown. So 351, 350 picofarads. Does that sound right? There's no arrow on it. It's just mica mold is below the dots. So the orange is above the top of the M on mica mold. And I thought mica molds were paper that go bad and short, but I don't know. I'm not going to try and change it. Alright, this one here says mica mold, and the dots are below it, so brown is below the bottom of the M, so this brown, black, red. So is that 1,000 picofarads? 1 0 and then 2 zeros. Okay, this one here is another one with the arrows, green, black, brown. So is that 5 0 and then 1 0, so 500 picofarads. This one here is red, green, black. I know with the low quality lighting you can't really see that. So red is 2 5 25 picofarads. So would black would be 0. Would that represent no 0 in that placeholder? So would that just be 25 picofarads? I don't know. I'm asking. I've never had to really change these. I'm just really guessing here. I mean, hell, I don't mind looking stupid. It's all about the learning process. How about this one? Blue with a yellow dot on the bottom and a black dot. I'm sorry, blue dot on the M and then a brown dot at the end of mica mold and then a yellow dot below. So would this be 640? Is that right? 6, 4, and then 1 0, 640. This one looks like it might be easy enough to actually get out and check. I just took these two loose and checked them, and that's precisely what they are. So no leakage, and the eye is wide opening, so they must be mica and they're in good shape. And the values, I'm guessing, were correct.